Depletion of natural resources requires use of the units of production method. And to review, this is just like a plant asset. It's a long-term asset, so you capitalize it, which means all the cost to get this natural resource ready for operations. That's how much you can capitalize. And there's often included an actual asset retirement obligation, which is an upper-level topic. So looking at this from a principal's perspective, focus on the depreciation or the depletion of this natural resource. Looking at this from an intermediate accounting level, then think about that additional asset retirement obligation that is on a separate video. But what is capitalization? To review, well, I incur cost for this long-term asset, but I'm not going to expense it. I'm going to capitalize it, and then through depletion, I will remove some of that deferred expense to the income statement over time. It's a cost allocation, just like depreciation is. Review of a little terminology. It's very similar: cost, estimated salvage, useful life in units. Big difference is it's called depletion instead of depreciation. And of course, this requires the units of production. Looking at an example, it is 2 steps. First, cost minus salvage divided by life in units gives you depletion per unit. Then step 2, multiply that by actual units extracted. Very similar to units, or actually identical to the units of production for depreciation, but this is a natural resource that we call it depletion. Plugging the numbers, and there's your per unit 48 cents, and then you determine how much did you actually extract. Multiply that by the amount, by the actual depletion expense and accumulated depletion or mine. And how does it look on the balance sheet? The historic cost is shown and the book value is shown. This was year 1. Now we go to year 2. Different amounts. Accumulated depletion is increasing because now you're in year 2 of the depletion, the cost allocation, and the actual expense for this year is dependent on how many units were produced. Year 3. Now, what if I have a plant asset aside specifically to use only on the natural resource? Then you have to use the same method for consistency. So looking at a couple of examples here of the natural resource, you have the cost, salvage, estimated life in units. It's not hard to remember, just make sure you keep the denominator the same. Cost minus salvage divided by life in units. It's that life in units that you keep the same. For a natural resource, we call it depletion expense and accumulated depletion. Now that plant asset, while we are required to use the same units of production method, we still call it depreciation because it's a plant asset. If the asset is only going to be used for that one project, you have to use the same method for consistency. But if you can move it later, then you get to choose. Straight line, units of production, declining balance, or that fourth sum of the year's digits. And that is depletion for natural resources.